It's Friday night, and it's time for Althing Considered. Tonight, we're talking about winter nights. It's a holy tide where we celebrate the end of the fall season and the beginning of the winter nights. It's mentioned by medieval Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson as one of the three major holidays, along with, of course, Sigrblot and Yule. Tonight, we're going to dive into the who, what, when, why, and how, along with the latest in heathen news. Hey, y'all. Happy to have everybody here with us tonight. My name is Lauren Crow. I'm president and CEO of the Troth, 20-year heathen and current Githia of Black Bear Kindred in Little Rock and vicinity, Arkansas. I am here with our two co-panelists. Sarenth?
Hello.
You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, no, of course not.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Seth Edson. I am a Gothi of a small kindred in Southeast Michigan. I am a heathen spirit worker. I'm a co-host of Around Grandfather Fire and co-host of Three Pagans on Tap, which the latter of which you can find here on YouTube. You can also find our archived shows for Around Grandfather Fire on our website through Anchor/Spotify or through YouTube. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Happy to have you here. And of course, Piper.
Hi, everyone. My name is Piper Perry. I am here tonight as both the Public Relations Director of the Troth and as the Githia of Mountain Raven Kindred here in beautiful Colorado and the Denver Metro. And I'm also really happy to be here this evening. Thank you.
I am so excited to have you guys, and especially happy for Piper to stepping in. Ben KG is not joining us tonight because his wife planned a surprise date and we didn't want him to get killed. So
That's legit.
Really happy to have you guys here, and happy to have you because one of the points of this show was really to give diverse opinions, and we can't do that if it's just Ben and I staring at each other all the time. We already do that a lot during the week. I don't really want to continue to do that all the time. Thank you guys so much. So we're gonna hop in. We are took some feedback from you guys last week, so we are gonna have a few announcements. We've got some news to cover, and then we'll hop into that main topic. All right, have a few announcements for you. Coming up on the 9th and 10th of November is the Performing Magic in the Pre-Modern North Hybrid Conference. If you're in Aberdeen or in the UK and would like to go in person, it's there, or you can do it online. Though keep in mind, it is going to be done on UK time. So if you're in the States, that means getting up super early or just not going to bed is my plan. Conference is focusing on magic in ancient, medieval, and early modern Northern Europe. Magic, both as a concept and a tool, is frequently featured in textual sources in the pre-modern North. So if you're interested in that, we will have that information down in our show notes. Our Heathen Essentials Study Group, which is a service the Troth provides. You don't have to be a Troth member. Everyone is welcome if you're new to heathenry. And if you're interested in learning the basics of heathenry, it is the first and third Saturday of each month. And you can learn more about that at our website, thetroth.org. Also, Winter Troth Moot. I'm so excited. It's going to be the 12th through the 14th of January, 2024. Online, it's $25 for the weekend. And all of that money is actually going to help fund scholarships for people to attend in-person Troth Moot, as well as offsets our costs. We rotate the thing around the United States every year. And because of the wildfires on the West Coast, we are very limited in where we can go this year. So our costs this year are a lot higher than in the past. So we are charging a small amount for Winter Troth Moot to help try to offset those costs to make this a more accessible event for everyone. We're going to have rituals, workshops. In fact, I told Sarenth if he didn't do his rune workshop, I was going to sign him up.
I'm looking forward to doing it. It's going to be encountering the runes.
I'm really excited. I'm going to be doing the introduction to folk magic And then, of course, we are very excited that we will have a screening and discussion of the documentary Torture in Our Name from the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. So I'm really excited to have an opportunity to watch that screening and have this discussion and talk about the realities of solitary confinement around the world and how we, as people who believe in the dignity of humans, can work to try to end solitary confinement in its current form. So that is online, of course, at our website, thetroth.org. And tomorrow, right here on any of these streaming platforms you're watching us on, tomorrow we are going to have an Álfablót live stream. It will be at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we will have a live Álfablót ritual for anyone who is alone, doesn't have a kindred, or for some other reason would like to celebrate Álfablót with us. And I'm going to be doing that. So we'll be live from either my back porch or my dining room, depending on the weather tomorrow. It is supposed to storm, so we'll probably be in my dining room. So I'm really excited for that and looking forward to providing that for you guys. And that's something that we're going to start doing a lot moving forward, is offering streaming ritual for anyone who needs it, because there's so many. I don't know about you. I mean, we all have kindreds. We are so lucky, but some of us, so many people don't, right? So many people don't have that community. And so this is really a chance to help people have a way to celebrate these holidays with others and not feel alone. So now let's move on to News for Heathens. All right. So first thing we're going to talk about, let me switch over here and share my screen, because this was such a cool thing, right? So is it going to let me? I haven't shared my screen on here in so long that I'm just like, I don't remember what I'm doing. There we go. Present. Share screen.
There you go. Sometimes it takes the connection a minute to.
Yeah, it does take a minute. There we go. All right. So Smithsonian shared this really great article today, or this week, about, and it's actually a little older, but it came across my feed. I want to talk about it. Archaeologists discover a 4,000-year-old Dutch Stonehenge. It's a really cool ritual site, and that was used, of course, to determine the longest and shortest days of the year. I kind of found this was interesting, especially in the fact that we're talking about winter nights tonight. And I thought these artist renderings, because it was a wooden site, right? It wasn't stone. They don't actually have the, it's not like Stonehenge where stone is wooden, but look at that rendering of what they think it looked like. Isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah, take inspiration, heathens, please.
Yes.
Yes.
For sure. So they found this 4,000-year-old ritual site, and it's the size of like 7 American football fields. It's huge. And with mounds, it had these lights, and oh man, I'm really kind of blown away here. And it also held the remains. It was also a burial ground. So, we talk about kind of the ties between seasonal and death and birth and all that. Well, we have evidence right here. So we're really excited to see what they find, what more conclusions we can draw from it, not just from a historical perspective, but also, of course, from the perspective of religious and how we can actually practice this. So I'm excited.
This is fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing what they determine from further archaeological exploration as to like what grave goods they find and what the burial patterns themselves start to emerge. Like, is there a pattern to how they're laid out in the site? What does this indicate? Is there, for instance, some component between gender and where this person gets placed on what part of the star alignment? I think that these open up so many awesome questions just as much as they provide answers. Yeah. I just love that about archaeology in general.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that they found that I thought was really cool was they actually found glass beads from or what we call now Iraq
Right.
at this site, which is just amazing.
The distance
So,
between where glass was made versus where they found this is just awesome. Yeah.
And the fact that they were able to try, bring it that far, and how many hands did that glass probably go through?
At least, 3,000 miles between?
Yes.
And God knows how many treks. Like,
for sure.
Human lifespans it took to get there? Holy crap.
Yeah. So,
makes you tingle.
Then, so the next story we have on this one is about the rise of knitting poles in Iceland. And I sent you guys leave a chat for all the panelists. I sent this. And I sent this, everybody said, oh my God, we have to talk about this right now because it was so cool, right?
Right.
Because first of all, what heathen has not had some sort of thought of, I should erect a knitting pole for some reason.
I certainly have.
I was talking with someone. Yeah. I was having a conversation about whether or not it would be a true modern knitting pole if I took like a PVC pipe and one of those rubber horse head masks from Amazon.
Ooh, nice. Yes, I like it.
Or you get one of those singing fish and stick it on the end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be.
Well, I mean, where I am, I'm thinking, what about a deer head?
Oh, yeah.
You probably find 50 of them between where I live, between here and Memphis on the interstate.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So what's the context of these poles going up? Do we have an idea?
Interesting.
I think it's really interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
It comes to... Oh, go ahead, Piper, please.
Oh, okay. When you think about knitting poles, and this is something that's calling someone out for behavior, right?
Yeah.
And horses are now like a luxury item rather than a necessity. So that's actually a really expensive. You're real mad about it if you're going to raise a knitting pole today, right? The old-fashioned one. I love the PC. The pipe and the horse mask, that works really well. But the other interesting thing I found out with this article was that they were they'd done it against corporations, right? And if this is your most obvious last resort way of trying to bring justice to a problem that no one else wants to listen to, I actually think that's a really cool modernization of the use of what that does. Mm-hmm. So,
especially because you're literally calling on the Landvættir to be turned against whomever this poll's directed at.
And they mentioned Union Carbide in here, and Union Carbide is behind one of the worst mine disasters in the United States. So you want to talk about one of the most horrifying things that can be done to your country and to your Landvættir is to have this company come in and mine or frankly do anything. So that you're protesting and you're having the land protest with you. And that's such a serious thing.
Right.
Because you're asking your land to basically outlaw these people. Not just outlaw by law, but outlaw by the land. And wow, that's so hardcore. And also, right, you have to be really mad. You're really angry.
I really am enjoying the fact with this story that how many times knitting poles have been raised against the Icelandic parliament. Because the majority of the knitting poles that they have raised have absolutely been against the Icelandic parliament. Because whether it is for, in fact, when whether it has to do with knitting poles regarding environmental destruction, disagreements with how things were done, in fact, they're talking about Saving Iceland, which is a grassroots organization, environmental organization, actually used a statue outside of Parliament as their knitting pole and put the horse head in the guy's hand, which I thought was creative. And yeah, it's been, and of course you have one instance where a guy erected one against his neighbor and actually got arrested for threatening the guy's life by erecting a knitting pole.
Word to the wise for everybody that's thinking about erecting these against your neighbor.
Yeah. And it was interesting. One of the most recent one that was raised that they were talking about is there was a knitting pole that was recently erected against a man because several women felt they couldn't get justice for sexual assault.
Right.
And so as someone who has been a victim of sexual assault, I find that really empowering. Like, especially when you know the police aren't going to listen, but man, I can go make a big public spectacle of this in a way that to me is religiously significant. And also, if I lived in Iceland, would be like culturally and socially significant. And people take it seriously when you do it there.
Yes. Yes, they do.
I'm sure.
Which we see by the person that, took it as a threat from their neighbor when their neighbor did it. But I also liked the story where the women, the part of the story where the women had raised it against a sexual abuser. I thought that was, again, the last bastion of justice that you can get, right? When no one else will listen to you.
I think it's kind of funny how the article rounds out the end with, these polls are futile. And it's like, really? Uh-huh. With the way that this is structured, it seems more like, whether you believe in the literal magic of it or not, and I am somebody who does, the fact that you're willing to go this far says something to the entire neighborhood or to the nation, depending on where you're erecting this thing. It can't be futile because you wouldn't be worried about it if it was. Even from a strictly secular point of view, knitting poles represent somebody that got so pissed they went out and put a head of an animal on a pole and pointed it at you.
And I think one of the things that we kind of have to put here is that the author obviously was an American writing about Iceland and doesn't really understand the cultural significance. I think that is a big part of this. And that's nothing heathens ever run into, is it?
Not never. Not never.
Never. I think that shows up the most in this article when he's talking about the weather cursing. And I'm not sure cursing is the right word, right? It could be weather manipulation with the fish rather than the horse head. Right. So you're asking for, although the example that they have is someone calling in storms to destroy someone else's boat. So, but just the idea that you could call weather, whether it was stormy or not. And
listen, there's a reason we don't let Ben Wagner sing certain songs at Troth.
I can see
you were there. Y'all were there at the
last
Troth.
I was there. Yes.
And there's a reason I'm never allowed to do Thorbloats, because the last time I did a Thorbloat, I flooded out an entire festival campground.
Okay.
There's a rule. If I ever go back, I'm not allowed. So, but that's the thing. Like, recently, a certain she who must not be named true crime TV host.
Okay.
The one who likes to yell "Top Mom," Nancy Grace.
Yeah, Nancy Grace
went on a screed about how dumb our beliefs were in regards to the whole Delphi situation, which I'm not getting into tonight. So if you ask, I'm ignoring you on chat. Just letting you know. I'm sorry.
No, I understand totally. I mean, that's not what we're talking about tonight. And also, that's crazy.
But she was like making fun of our beliefs and like, I can't believe people still believe this. And I'm just like, and I can't believe that people think you're a credible source, but here we are. So in great news, and I know you haven't seen it yet, Sarah, I'm sorry. Piper has. The new Jethro Tull Wolf Unchained video.
Oh, I'm going to admit a hit thing here. I'm old. So I've been listening to Jethro Tull my entire adult life. I love them so much. And one of the things that I love the most lately is their lean into Norse mythology and exploring the themes, the emotional themes. And that's really what they're working with for this music. And, you know, they're doing such a Wolf Unchained is so amazingly cool. For just the emotional resonance of that particular story for us. So yeah, very cool.
It's amazing. So it's based on Fenrir, right? And the video is up on YouTube. If you have not had a chance to see it, you have to go watch it. Between the music and the video, it's amazing. And I feel like if someone in Jethro Tull is not heathen, they should be, because they really understood it, not, like I said, on an emotional level. I was really, really impressed with that.
What I've gotten to hear, it sounds like classic, like maybe not from the 70s, but like when I was growing up, 80s, 90s Jethro Tull.
Mm-hmm.
That it has that sound to it where it's got the drum and the rhythm and all of that just kind of coming in. It almost smacks you in the face. So I kind of really appreciate just the wall of sound he hits you with starting off.
Yeah, and I also loved the nostalgia feel of like the 80s, 90s sound of Tull, right? Jethro Tull. Yeah, that was they're doing really good work, and they're touching us on a modern emotional level. That's very cool.
So Jethro Tull, guys, if you ever hear this, you know, we love it. You want to come talk to us, I would love it. I mean, I'm just saying, you have written something that for us as people this is our religion, we're into this. Like,
yeah,
and like,
so into this.
And the thing is, I'm like you. First of all, I grew up on classic rock, and I am, of course, now classic rock is the stuff that was out when I was a teenager, which makes me cry. But
True.
I am absolutely just blown away by this and how amazing it is. And listen, I'm going to freely admit, I'm not the biggest fan of Rodrina or any of those bands. I am the least Norse stylistic person in heathenry, sometimes it feels like. This is hitting me though. This is what I like. Like this is it. So I'm really excited, and I'm really grateful that this is out in the world for us.
For sure.
It's nice to have a breadth of sound. I'm a huge Rodrina and Heathen fan, but I love it when other bands get into our mythology and dig in really sink their teeth, pardon the pun, into our myths.
And so yeah, I am, like I said, I'm really excited. I'm really grateful, and I'm really hoping that they will continue to produce more music, or it will inspire other bands to do this kind of thing, especially those more thematic, I almost want to say symphonic bands. Like it's almost getting into rock opera territory, right? Like Meatloaf could have done a killer Norse mythology album.
For sure. Yes.
I know, right? These are the, you know, like that's where my brain goes. Sorry, guys.
I'm just imagining Bad out of Helheim.
Yes, exactly. Right. That's exactly where our brain went. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, you're welcome. Somebody take that and fucking run with it.
Yeah. Oh my God! Now I gotta tell Ben Wagner about this. He will somehow come up with this. He will make this happen. Parody music. It'll be great. So yeah. All right, you guys ready to get into our main topic tonight?
Sure.
All right.
Let's do it.
let's do it and get in and talk about the holy tide of winter nights. If you're wondering why we're doing these little like swoopy things, that's because it makes it easier for us to come back and do timestamps later so that people who are listening can go in and find specific information they're looking for. So I'm going to start this off with a little bit from the Old English metrical calendar as translated by Ben Waggoner. Then the first day of winter widely roams. 6 nights after November 1st, it captures the sun bright. Autumn, fettered by frost with an army of ice and snow, by the Lord's command, so that the green meadows, the earth's finery, cannot stay with us. So, what is winter nights? So, we know it's one of the three. We know it's one of the three holidays that Snorri attested, right, along with that are mentioned. So it's a significant holiday. And I think it's one of the ones that most, we can argue about the minutia of a lot of other holidays, but it's one of the three that most heathens do celebrate. And if you follow the reconstructed, adapted Norse calendar like I do, it starts either at sundown or tomorrow sundown, depending on who you would like to argue with. So I guess the core, depending on, for some of us, it starts when we do Álfablót. So, however, what it is can actually be different across multiple traditions of heathenry. So we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit tonight. And Winter Nights isn't just, it's a period, it's a holiday.
Yeah, it's like a tide, like a it's more like a tide than an actual like single place in time, right?
Right. A lot of people compare, to compare it to something people might be more familiar with. It is like how we often refer to Yule. Yule is not, we have some kind of singular points in Yule, but Yule is a time period that,
Yes.
the wild hunt and all these things happen.
It's also really important to note, especially when you're talking about historical attestations, that these weren't static across time or even region, and whose voice is being recorded has an impact on what's being recorded, right? So, like, even as we're listing off these historical documents that record some of this stuff, it's really important to kind of like put this in its place of, this is a snapshot, right?
Yeah, and like what we're giving you are the historical attestations we have, right? It's not necessarily.
We don't have.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more we don't have. This is just what we have, and like most things in heathenry, this is the prepared dirt before you pour the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even necessarily the foundation; it's the prepared dirt, because all of these things that were written down by non-heathens way after they happened, or or they're from a non-heathen perspective because the Christians or the Romans or whoever thought that we were all little barbarians.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, we are, but that's beside the point. So let's go into talking a bit about the attestations from the north.
Sounds good.
So the first one here, we've got a little bit from Olaf's saga. Sarah, do you want to give that one a little read?
Sure. So that fall, the tidings were told to King Olaf at Thrandheim that the freeholders had held a feast attended by many at winter nights. There was much drinking there. The king was told that there was many ale, blessed to the Aesir, according to the old custom. The story continued that cattle and horses were killed, and the altars reddened with blood, and a bloat carried out, and the prayer performed that had to be made for better seasons. And that's from Olaf's Saga Halsa, 107.
It's on, yeah. So, kind of there is a very, very, and that's actually also one of the examples we have in the sagas of what a bloat even is, right?
Yeah.
So the Saxons have this thing called the 3-day feast. So the 3-day feast was something we don't actually know if it is a fall festival, but given all the context clues, it makes sense that it would be. So story about how the Saxon came to the land of the Thurgans, they didn't want them there. And there were battles, and then the Saxons ended up allying with the Franks, and they fought, and then after the victory, there was a celebration. And then we've got from in Res Gisse Saxonis, History of the Saxons in English. We've got some there, if Piper, if you don't mind taking a read on that one.
Okay. Let's see. When morning came, the Saxons placed an eagle before the eastern gate and constructed an altar of victory following the error of their fathers, which is one of those indications that like pagans didn't write that down. They worshipped their divinities in their own manner. They spent 3 days celebrating their victory, dividing up the booty from the enemy, celebrating funeral rites on the behalf of the dead, and praising their leader to the heavens. They acclaimed him for having a divine spirit and heavenly strength, since it was through his constancy that he brought them to achieve this victory. All of this was completed, according to the memory of our ancestors, on the 1st of October. These days of error have been transformed through the decrees of religious men into fasts, prayers, and offerings by all of those who became Christians before us.
Now, I want to, let's point something out here. In Christianity, Islam, Judaism, having holidays that mark significant events in the calendar is common, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do we have any of those holidays really that do that that are like common in any of the European pagan religions? I mean, I know the answer. I'm just asking.
I'm trying to rack my brain.
Yeah, I'm racking my brain too. And I'm not really finding anything because we seem, at least from the records that I've read, and I am not a remember exactly where that came from person. But from what I've read, we celebrated time, like harvest time, like cyclical time. Not like objective or like linear time. It was we did this same time, around the same time. I mean, because you're talking about figuring off of the sun and the moon, and Manny and Sunna are like giving us little indications. No, really, this is when the season's going to be bad. The Landvatir are giving us little indications. No, the winter's going to be really wet this year. Like we have a bunch of them here in Colorado, for example, right now. So yeah, I can't think of any like we won this battle this day. Yay! We remember it forever. So I can't think of one.
I think you had things like founding of cities. You had you might have like birthdays for like the genius of an emperor or something, but not as such like we find in the Abrahamic religions or in even say Sikh tradition. There's not this kind of, okay, well, we're going to cyclically celebrate this one battle we had this one time. There's like ties where we celebrate victories or we bloat for victory, but there's not like a set battle that we're like, yeah, we kicked their butt, we're awesome.
Yeah,
nothing quite like that where it's set in stone. Like this is the epoch.
And you would be correct.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, we tend to be more focused on cycles. So I'm going to agree with kind of the general idea that I have seen from a lot of Saxon heathens that they believe that this is actually more likely a it just happened that this harvest festival fell around the same time as, the end of this battle.
Right.
That makes much more sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now we're going to talk about everyone's favorite historian, Bede. Yay. Y'all know I'm just such a fan.
Why is Bede everyone's favorite historian?
I was being very sarcastic. I don't like that. But I will say that Bede does happen to mention that in Old English, the Old English calendar, essentially the old name for October was winter full moon.
Yep.
And winter was considered the 6 months in which the nights were longer than the days. So the 6 months between the autumn and spring equinoxes. Mm-hmm. And it would begin officially on the first full moon in October. Mm-hmm. So if we take the Roman calendar from the equation, it would make sense that then that month would actually be the first full moon after the autumn equinox. And then bloat month or sacrifice month would be the second full moon. He did call November bloat month, the bloat of animal sacrifices, for which the cattle were to be slaughtered, were consecrated to their gods. And this is also from the Reckoning of Time. And in the Netherlands, they also, even now, a folk name for November is slaughter month, which, if you think about, once again, makes sense. This is the time when you have to make those hard choices about what animals you're keeping through the winter, because animals are hard to feed during the winter.
They are. And you're also picking as to what animals will bring you the best future, right? So you may have this great little milker cow, and you want to keep her, and you want to make sure she has more kiddos. So you keep her, even though maybe she's a little bit finicky on eating or something, because her future is going to be better, right? She's going to have good calves in the future, hopefully. But yeah, if you're on a farm, you're trying to figure out what to live through the winter and what you want to live with, right? Because a lot of those really cold places, they're in your house. Those cattle, those goats, those sheep are in your house.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, a lot of this meat was going to be preserved, right. It was going to be dried. So really, this is kind of the last time you're getting fresh meat. You're going to be able to have these really big feasts, and you've just done a ton of labor in doing the harvest. So yeah, this is the first time you've really had a chance to sit down and rest in months.
Right. Yeah. And in the Icelandic calendar, the medieval Icelandic calendar, you've got Haustmanuther and then Gormanuther, which kind of takes place around this time of year when winter nights hits. Haustmanuther is like harvest month, and then Gormanuther is like slaughter month. So it makes a lot of sense that these two calendars would line up given all the factors involved with the two areas. So you're really talking about a period of time where there's really sacralizing the autumn harvests of both the field and the farm, and really making the hard choice of what goes in the cellar, what goes in the barn.
And it was also a time, you know that you're going to be stuck inside with these people for months. So you're also looking at a time where you're wanting to strengthen your bonds of frith with your family, and also ask for protection, because these are going to be hard months. People are going to get sick. People are going to die. This is, I think, for those of us who it's really easy for us to go to the grocery store and get groceries, who are somewhat disconnected from this, it's hard for us to think about exactly how really challenging it was.
Especially when you're talking about a season in which you're kind of taking a gamble every time you slaughter an animal, right? Because you're not sure if that was going to be the healthy one or if that one you slaughtered. You're kind of rolling the dice and praying to the gods that they're with you, because maybe Bessie did really good last year, but she's not going to do so good this one.
Right.
So we go into Scandinavia and a little more. And it's like you're talking about, we have the autumn month, which comes from midsummer, September to mid-October. And the 3 days at the end of that month were winter nights. And originally it began, like in England, it did mark the beginning of the slaughtering. And in fact, like you're talking about, the Icelandic calendar was slaughter month.
Mhm.
And you have several sagas that mention autumn gathering. And Eagle Saga specifically mentions Autumnblót or Husblót, which on the reconstructed calendar the Troth has, we celebrated about 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And then, but some sagas have those as the same. So you have Husblót and Winter Nights as the same holiday, and some don't, which just
Mhm.
shows kind of the, once again, time and place. And, in one community it was the same, in another it wasn't.
Right.
It really is, it just depends. And in Gisla Saga 15, we have a little excerpt here where it shows it from Winter Nights. Saranth, if you would read that one there.
Yeah. So Thorgrim intended to have an autumn gathering at winter nights and welcome winter and sacrifice to Freyr, and he invited his brother Bork and Eyjolf Thordarson and many other prominent men. Gisli also prepared a feast and invited his kin from Arnafjord and the two Thorketels. There were no fewer than 100 men at Gisli's home. There was to be drinking at both houses, and the floor at Sable was strewn with sedges from Setjorn. Uh, Something really important, I think, to mention here. This is probably the last act of getting together these guys are going to have until the Althing.
Right.
This is the last chance you get to make a good impression on your neighbors before everything freezes.
Yep.
Which would explain why you have so many people. I mean, can you imagine, as the holder of the keys in that house, trying to feed and quarter and have enough drinks for 50 guys? I mean, right before you have to pinch for winter, right? Because you have to pray that you survive until March or April or May, right?
This is the ultimate way of showing just how much in the way of resources you have at this point.
Yes, it really is.
Well, but it really is also the ultimate show of hospitality.
It is.
It is.
I think that's something, if you don't mind, really quick, I think that's something that we can miss in the modern period when everybody has access to stores, that at least a good chunk of these guys are working the land, and then the organization of it from that point on is left up to a Jarl or a Gothi who's basically taking tax for the hall that they're all going to be feasting in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of, in a very real sense, the fruit of at least some of these guys' labor, but refined and put into different contexts and then redistributed in the gifting cycle. Like, this is par excellence gifting cycle stuff. And when your food and your drink comes from the store, you kind of lose some of that exchange because you're giving somebody a piece of plastic or your phone or whatever, and you're getting something in return. Whereas these were animals that they grew up and slaughtered. These were fields that they worked. Well, and their hands come back.
We don't really live in a gifting cycle in modern capitalism. We live in a buying cycle, right? So part of what we do as heathens is try to restore that gifting cycle. So not only are we thinking like these guys that helped us farm however much land we have, but we're also thanking the land vitir for giving us all of this great abundance that we can share with other people. And we're thanking the gods, and we're really hoping that they'll let us live throughout the winter.
Right.
And also in the saga, it does mention that Winter Night's bloat was to Frey. So that, I think, is something important, and we'll factor into the bloat I'm doing tomorrow on wherever you're watching this. So I guess the next question is, how do we calculate when Winter Nights is? Because unlike most calendars, that most holidays now have a fixed date, right? Um, I know Halloween is October 31st. The 4th of July is the 4th of July. Um, so how do we calculate these dates that are based more on a solar lunar cycle than necessarily on, you know, a on a fixed date?
Some of it has to come down to simple convenience.
Mhm.
Some of it has to come down to, does it make sense for me to celebrate harvest here? Because if you're in Australia and your harvest is on the opposite side of the calendar you're staring at, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try to force the landscape into your preconceived notion of what it should look like. So the way that I conceive of it
I've
is
never felt
the
more
land tells me
stupid.
to do.
I've never been more stupid than I think the first or second year we, as a kindred, we had a Winter Nights, and we are out in shorts and flip-flops in 90-degree weather in the middle of October having a Winter Nights. I have never felt more stupid in my life.
I think that this really gets to the regionality because, relatively speaking, a lot of these guys that we're looking at with the sagas are living in the same rough part of the world and the same rough part of where they're coming from, right? Like the earlier example in, I think it was Gisli's saga with Osvith celebrating 2 weeks earlier or half a month earlier or whatever it was. He's not living all that far away. And even he's like, all right, look, the harvest hasn't come in yet. There's no point to celebrating yet.
Right. I like the custom of first frost, last frost, personally, because first frost here is today, actually. So that's a really good time for me, a first hard frost. That's a really good time for me to indicate by the land that this is what's happening. But again, that's different even in the United States where you live. I'm in Colorado. Frost comes in October. There are other places in the United States where frost comes in September. So yeah, it's also paying attention to the land around you and what's happening. And for sure, I'd like the frost cycle for that.
If the problem where I live is if we did the frost cycle, we would be celebrating. Some years, Winter Nights would be after Yule.
Oh,
in Arkansas.
Well then,
yeah,
yeah, totally understandable, right? Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about historically how it was calculated, and then we'll get into how some modern pagans. So historically, the Norse in the Icelandic calendar, Winter Nights began on a day between October 8th and 15th in the Julian calendar, or between the 19th and 27th on the Gregorian calendar. In Norway, it was always fixed on October 14th. The Saxons, now bases on what limited information we have October 1st as the date. The Old English, we have the first full moon after the autumn equinox. But let's talk about modern. You have some folks who will follow one of these dates very religiously. No pun intended. Some go on the first full moon, some go on the second. Others do it with the leaves. So when the leaves start to turn is when their tide starts. When they fall off, that's when it ends. Other people who might be more closely tied with agriculture might work in farming or some other agriculture-based thing, might actually tie it to the end of a particular harvest. For instance, you might tie the beginning of it to your soybean harvest and the end of it to your wheat harvest. Yeah. That is something I've actually seen people around me do, is tie it very specifically to a specific harvest. It really just depends on where you are. But at the end of the day, I've often found that it comes down to tying it to whatever works best for your community, your land rights. your family, because if we want to get like super fundamentalist about it, is the best way I have to describe it, and say we must do it exactly on the first full moon after the autumn equinox. I work 10-hour shifts. If that's a Wednesday, good luck.
That also has a lot to do with it. People's jobs now are not as flexible for that kind of stuff. So yeah, when can everyone get together? That's the best time to pick. Right?
Yep. Yep. Unfortunately, like, you know, and this is where like having multiple having bloatar is kind of nice, because you can do something that's more meaningful down home and maybe makes more sense from an animistic perspective and is more in tune with the local cycles, and it makes more sense from that perspective. And then, you know, you've got your bigger bloats, or you've got your online bloat because you may not have a community around you. Well, here you go. I'll log into Discord or onto YouTube or what have you, and I will share an Álfablót with the Troth tomorrow. And this flexibility is something I think that our ancestors would have jumped on with both feet, honestly. You know,
well, you can't tell me if they would not have loved the amount of convenience and tools that we have now.
They were pitching like rune sticks through each other's windows to pass messages. They would love the conveniences of email and instant messaging.
For sure. Oh my gosh, yes. And just the idea that you could talk, you weren't stuck in a house with just your family all winter, right? You could talk to other people. Other people existed, right? It wasn't like you're surrounded by ice. Yeah, right? When you come out in the spring and like, okay, whose farm is, who's still alive? Which of my neighbors is still alive? Sort of thing. And to have that conversation during that time would have been fabulous. They would have loved that. And, you know,
let's not forget how great their raids would have been with GPS.
Oh, yes. Man.
Yes. That would have been amazing.
The Yelp reviews for Linda's farm would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, if I say a Viking era housewife would have seen an electric spinning wheel and passed out. Like,
oh, for sure. Or a sewing machine.
Oh my gosh.
A sewing machine. Oh, hand sewing. Yeah, it takes forever. And I've done that. So, yeah.
From a traditionally female role perspective, this is also the time when women have the most amount of work in these households.
Yes.
Because they're going to spend their entire winter spinning, weaving. It's like 120 hours to construct one garment.
Yep.
From the carding to the spinning to the weaving and all of that, which a lot of times they have done their spinning. So this is the time of weaving and sewing.
Well, I think there was actually, was it Winter Nights or Yule? I can't remember which. There was some kind of taboo where you needed to finish your spinning before the holiday. It was Yule. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I can't even grok the amount of pressure to get the elves of clothing done so that all this can be finished.
Everything was happy. Yeah, everything was happy for the winter. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it was a really cool experience. So I guess the question then becomes, in modern times, why do we celebrate winter nights? Like, why is this? We've talked about historical, but you know, we're not an agricultural society anymore. So really, what is the significance of this? Why do we do this now?
I mean, the smart ass off the cuff answer is because we needed a Samhain.
Oh, that's a good answer, because that's actually
I'm gonna. Yeah,
because that's actually my
fight with the
practical
Wiccans
answer.
and tell them,
yes.
Yeah. Is this where I can pick fight with the Wiccans and tell them my holiday is better than your holiday?
I mean, if you really want to, but you know, I come from the neck of the woods where we all kind of celebrate different holidays together. So,
yeah.
Sorry, I mean,
a lot of
I was having flashbacks from my days at Also True Lore.
Oh no.
If those of you don't know, that was a forum that existed in the 2000s. It was really like the Wild West hardcore reconstructionist.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
the Sister Bertha Better Than You forum. It was,
Oh, yes.
Gosh.
I remember that
Yeah.
one. Oh, yikes. Yeah.
I most definitely do not remember it, but I have. It exists in legend and myth.
Yes. Yes.
So,
because I think all humans have the sort of urge to honor their dead, to their beloved dead. And we have a lot of holy days, holy tides this time of year around us, culturally around us. I mean, here in Colorado, we have a very large Latinx population, and Day of the Dead is very important here. In fact, we're having a celebration for that in November. Our kindred is not. I am attending one. I've been invited to one. But there is people die and we miss them. And we want to remember them at some point. And because everything else is dying too, this seems like a good time. And also Halloween is pretty cool. And yeah, we really, from a practical, really needed something like Samhain where we could talk about our dead.
I may or may not be dressing my corgi up as a hot dog this year.
Nice. Mine has bat wings. The kind that clip onto the back mount.
And it really is. It is about we have that loss of the people that we love. And especially the past few years, we've had so much loss. I think that Winter Nights becomes an even more important holiday. You know, we talk about, you know, in the Havamal, and I'm going to use Ben Wagner's translation, which, by the way, if you aren't aware, the Troth has our own translation of the Havamal, and it's $6. And if you buy one, we donate another one to someone in prison who is an inclusive heathen, or to an active duty service member. So just like, you know, and, you know, we have that cattle die or wealth. So our wealth dies. Friends die. You will die yourself. I know one thing that never dies: the memory of those who have died.
Yeah.
I mean, our wealth is transitory. Everything is transitory except for others' memories of us and our reputation. And I think in this, once again, in a capitalist consumerist society, that is an important thing to reflect on.
Not like you can take it with you.
Nope.
No, you cannot. Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that I won't be taking offerings of gold, silver, copper, etc. at my graveside, but me personally, will not be clambering into the grave with arms full of silver. But no, I mean, this Winter Nights really does ground us in that truth, that the exchanges we've made here while we're alive, the impact we've had, that's the wealth that really lives on. That's the soul that lives on in the people we've touched. And it's the last one to fade, that other people can see, touch.
I think, yeah.
It's so easy to lose sight when you're flitting from thing to thing, when a lot of the hustle and bustle around this time of year is, okay, get the thing, now take the thing and go do the thing. And it's very, I think that the general trend of this time of year, like I just walked through my local Costco not that long ago, and they're already putting up Christmas decorations. It's like, can we get through Halloween and Thanksgiving first? so even the transitions between what are essentially secular holidays are being sacrificed so that the companies that put out the product, the plastic kitsch and all the other stuff, can make more money. And it's really losing a lot of that human contact. It's not even about the, the plastic kitsch can't be cute and fun to play with, but it's the emphasis on consumption itself as an end in itself, as opposed to relationship building and gift giving, has become the monster, the Ouroboros, really. And Winter Nights is like, you're going to die. You're going to die. What are you leaving behind?
All of the stuff that you've collected won't matter. What matters is how you've affected the people around you. And when you're talking about ancestors this time of year, as a queer person, that's always a little bit touchy, because there are, family members that are down with that. So you have to, this is a time to heal too. This is a time to find those memories of people that affected your life, that reached out and touched you, that helped you up, that weren't your bloodline, that weren't your blood ancestors, right? That teacher in the 6th grade that told you you could write, that, and you don't remember her name, but you remember what she said, right? Those sorts of things. Those are the sorts of things now that, as modern heathens, we could be thinking about, right? The effect, not only that we have, but of other people have had on us.
Yeah. For me, I am, we very recently, as in this week, lost a close family member, but that family member is not someone that is a beloved family member, I guess is a good way to put it. There are some, it's not my story to tell, but I will say, even tonight, I was talking with a good friend of mine, and I was like, I don't know that I'm feeling the right thing right now. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this. And I think it's a good time to deal with those very conflicting feelings we have about those loved ones in our life. I loved my grandmother to the moon and back, and my grandmother was a horrible racist person. And so one of my goals for this holy tide is really reconciling those two things in my heart, because on one hand, I loved her because she understood me, because we have the same kind of crazy. On the other hand, my grandmother named her son Jim Crow. I mean, literally, that's my dad's name, Jim Crow. And I had to shame her my entire life. She would use the word more commonly used for rugs to refer to anyone of Asian descent.
Yes.
And I would, every time she would say, well, my doctor is I'd say, your doctor's a rug? And so it's very hard to try to think about that and try to reconcile those people in our life. But yeah, it's also about, I always honor Rod Landreth at this time of year. And for those of you who never knew Rod was a cantankerous jerk and an absolute pain in my butt, and I loved him every moment of it. He was one of our he was an elder in the Troth. He was an elder in the Midwest. He was basically our traveling Gothi. He was an incredible friend. He helped create our clergy program as we have now in the Troth, and just a really great guy. He passed away, it's been like 7 years now. But he's someone I always honor, because he's an ancestor to all of us really in this area. And he was a queer man who was an openly abashed queer man in a time when that wasn't necessarily accepted in all pagan and heathen circles. And he's also, to me, such an ancestor of all of us who are queer or not fitting the general mold of the cis white straight people. And I miss him and I love him. And he's another person I honor. Is he a blood ancestor? No. Is he still an ancestor? Yes, absolutely. And I think that's something important to remember.
Not all blood is family.
Nope. Not at all.
Not all blood is family. Not all blood are ancestors you want to honor, and I get that. In my own practice, I have a series of powerful ancestors that I give praise to. The Disir, which most heathens will recognize, but the Fedrar, which means fathers, which are the powerful male equivalent of the Disir. And then I also honor Erki, which are people who were shunned or who are spirit workers, who were queer or trans, non-binary, etc. And then I also honor the Thever, which is an Old Norse word which relates to the word queer, to meaning to be across or to transverse. And I think that honoring any of the ancestors that fits the bill of somebody that you consider part of your family is just as valid as somebody that's blood and bone. Not all blood's family.
I mean, this year, one of my favorite teachers died, and I will, it's been more than a year since he's passed, so we will, I do follow that tradition where I don't, raise the horn to someone until they've been dead for at least a year to give them time to settle.
Same.
And so
Same.
this will be the year that I raise the horn for the first time to one of my favorite teachers, who I will tell this very brief story here, but he left such an impression on our boarding school. I went to boarding school that when we knew his dream was, when he died, he wanted the second floor men's bathroom. His name was John Harrison, and he wanted it named the Harrison John. So the school told us we had to raise X amount of money for the foundation to have it happen, and it happened in less than 2 days.
Nice.
So now there's the Harrison John at the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts. But that's his reputation, and that's his memory. And to me, that's so heathen, because he's going to live on. I have my grandparents' signatures as a tattoo. I don't know if I can turn my arm. There we go. Kind of see it. Nice. To me, that's people ask me if I have any heathen tattoos, and I always show them this one, and it confuses them. But to me, that's the most heathen tattoo you can get. It's a marking. It's a remembering of my ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
So, because this is a holy tide, a lot of people, I will say, tend to start it with Álfablót and end it with Dísablót. So, what are these, right?
Right.
So you mentioned the Dísablót, but let's talk about the Alfar. Alfar. Oh goodness, we can argue about this forever. A lot of people will use the Alfar as a means of our male ancestors. Other people identify it more within the realm of the elves, and we'll see this more as the protective spirits of land and community. Just to give you kind of a very high level idea of what the kind of general beliefs are. However, as they always say, ask 2 heathens, get 10 opinions. Ask 3 heathens, get 30. So, Alfar, let's go. What do you think, Sarah? I know you've got lots of thoughts on this.
Oh, God. So these are a group of spirits that I try to avoid like the friggin' plague, because I consider them Fey adjacent. And that stopped being a thing I could do. So the Alfar and I, in the last couple of years, have come into understanding and very deep, good relationship. And part of that is thanks to Kat Heath and her book, Elves, Witches, and Gods. Excellent book. Highly recommend it for folks.
I would also like to plug her podcast with Morgan.
Please do.
Fairies.
Yeah, Feeding the Fairies is fantastic.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing.
So between the Mound Workshop that I took from her and the book that she put out and the working through of that I've done, my understanding of the Alfar is that you can have an yes approach to the Alfar and be just as fine as somebody who differentiates them as spirits of the land or connected to the land but not quite Lanvatir. I'm kind of in that category of some of them are connected to the land, some of them aren't. My understanding is that, like with a lot of denizens from different worlds, some of them are tied to this, and some of them are just doing their own thing out wherever Alfheim happens to be. So I kind of take a bit of a nuanced perspective on it. Are some of them male ancestors? Yeah, but that doesn't mean all of them are. Are some of them protective spirits of the land and community? Yeah, but not all of them are. It's kind of like asking, like, am I just a father? Or am I just a spirit worker? Am I just am I just, right? I think that if we contend that our personhood is not contingent on any one relationship, I think that we can afford the spirits that same level of personhood. So it's complicated.
Yes, it's complicated. Yeah, it's very complicated.
I mean, to me, it's like you look at any population of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Ours is, we are very specific because okay. I don't experience spirits of place the same way as I do east of the Mississippi. Okay. So I live west of the Mississippi. I experience spirits of place in a much different fashion than elves or Alfar or anything like that. It's very different out here. Okay. So if I'm doing an Álfablót, it is specifically for male ancestors, right? And most of my male relatives, living or dead, are military people. So we celebrate that on November 11th, Veterans Day, right? Both the living and the dead, right? But it's very specific. If I'm doing a spirit of place thing, I'm doing that at a different time of year and for different reasons, right? And then Dísablót is actually all of the grandmothers that fed us to survive, right? And we start the Holy Tide with that one, right? Because these are our ancestors that are going to keep us alive through the winter. It's like, please keep us alive through the winter, and then we do like stuff in between, and then at the end is and protect us, right?
Neat. I like
that. But yes, my understanding of elves is also Fey adjacent and also on the other side of the river. Have a lovely time.
See, and where I have to disagree with you, because I experience it completely differently, because I come from an Ozark cultural background. And for those of you who don't know, Ozarks are a child culture of the English and Scottish. And we very much have a very strong opinion of the wee folk, as we call them. So there is except they are very tied into the land based on the Ozark culture. And my heathenry is syncretic between Ozark culture and heathenry. I cannot separate those two because that's who I am. That's where I live. And so now I freely admit they may have brought them with them, but if you look back into indigenous lore, indigenous people agree with, there's so much indigenous lore in this area that is agreeing to what the people who came in and co-lived with the indigenous people in the Ozarks. So once again, very place-based. So for me, as someone who does traditional Ozark folk magic, who is very tied into this, it's such a huge part of who I am. It is very tied into that. However, I also believe, coming from my experiences that I've had, from discussions I've had with people, that there is definitely a tie within the land spirits and the dead. And so for me, some of those aren't even my ancestors. They are land ancestors.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
For something that I will do tomorrow as part of the ritual we're doing, we're going to be doing the ritual of land and community, because one, I think it's the most applicable broadly, but I will be doing land acknowledgement. And I have actually, for years, part of this will be next week, during this time period, is when I send my money to support the Caddo Firekeeper, that I send money every year to support, because that's how the Caddo people, their priest essentially was supported by the community. So, and then also what offerings we give for this ritual especially are guided very heavily by what I have learned speaking with the Caddo Cultural Center, because that's the main tribe that lived in this area. The Caddo Cultural Center, and the one time I got to speak to the Caddo Firekeeper. And that's going to be, that gears very much what I offer to the land. Like I never offer, like, we will have no alcohol. I don't drink, but even if I did, there will be no alcohol in this ritual, because of the very harmful history of white people and alcohol and indigenous Americans. So,
No, that totally makes
there's
sense.
no offering of, yeah. So for me, it's because of, like I said, it's very tied into where I am, where I live, and the culture here. And I think that's also important as you're learning about these things, is
Right.
the understanding where you are and how the spirits work together, because I do think it works differently in different places.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. One of the things that I liked about living different places in the United States was that I could explore, and traveling too. I do this, but traveling it's a little harder because you don't have as much time. But sitting with the spirits of the place and figure out, and I have actually met elves, I guess, on the eastern side of the Mississippi. But there's a major difference in feeling and connection. And a lot of that does have to do with settler colonialism, how we got here, how we settled here. Colorado has a really bad history with that. So, a lot of my practice is very much, I come in peace. I want to build a bridge here. And also, I love this land as well. Right.
And that's interesting, because like the Ozarks, it was never, because everyone who moved into the Ozarks was primarily very poor. And the Ozarks is not exactly the easiest place for anyone to keep themselves alive, just because of the geology and geography. The indigenous tribes of the area and the people who came in originally from the Appalachians lived very much side by side, because there was no resource competition in that way. They were all trying to work together. I mean, and you see this in tons of history and oral accounts from both sides, right? They were all kind of living together, trying to exist as a community. And I thought that was really beautiful. And a lot of the Ozark settlers hid a lot of indigenous people during the time when they were trying to push everyone off out west, because that was their community. Those were their neighbors. And so that's part of my ethics, I guess, on that, where I do try very hard to live in that way, that these are my community, these are my ethics, and I'm trying to coexist and not take over.
And I think that's the strength of the magic of those places, right? That is the strength of the connections, the relationships that you made, that your ancestors made with the people that lived here, to help them adjust to the land that they lived on, right? It was a cooperative relationship. It was not settler colonialism like you have pretty much west of the Mississippi, and some parts of east of the Mississippi as well. But I mean, west of the Mississippi, it's very stark, because if you come west of the Mississippi, you're looking for gold, you're looking for resources, you're looking for
I would say it's probably not even that far. It's further west than that, because I am west of the Mississippi in Arkansas.
Oh, cool. Okay. So yeah.
I would say it's more along
on the other side of
Texas. I would say I would say for the most part, you're going to look at like everything like Great Plains and further
west. Yes.
no
Where you start to have water be
yeah.
scarce, and you start to have later colonialization and all of that. Yeah.
I would argue anyone who set out from anything that set out from like Fort Smith or Missouri to be settled is going to fall into that. But yeah, no, Arkansas.
I like that. That's good.
So I'm saying, like,
I'm west of the Mississippi.
I
no, that's good though. That's a good differentiation because it is.
Yeah,
it's based on more of a settler model than it is an actual geographic thing, right?
Yeah. Well, and part of that also is most of Arkansas was initially settled by a lot of that was initially settled by the French, and so that's also kind of part of it. So it's a whole anyway. Geopolitics, ain't it fun?
Yes.
So,
and how different settlers changed where we live now and how we relate to spirits of place. Yeah, that's important. That's one of the things we get to think about this time of year with our ancestors.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things for me that I always thought about made the parts of the Ozarks especially better is because they were the Southerners who refused to join the South in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Unless they were physically captured and forced, they wouldn't do it. That always kind of cracked me up. All right, so let's talk a bit about we touched on it briefly, but the Deseer.
Yes.
That is another one that people have a lot of different ideas and thoughts about what they actually represent.
Yeah, absolutely. And for my part, it's complicated. Also applies here with the Deseer because are they powerful familial ancestors? Yeah. Those ancestors can include goddesses. Those ancestors can include beings of the land. Those ancestors can include, insert name of Vetir here. I don't think that we are limited in our capacity to hold relationships with people who are living here on Mythgarth. I don't think that we're limited in regards to the wider acceptance of relationships we can be brought into. Oftentimes I talk about ancestors of blood and bone, spirit, adoption, lineage, initiation, and that adoption is a two-way street. There might be a group of spirits that go, "Hey, you're paying attention, you're listening. Let's actually form a relationship here." So are the Deseer bound to the land? Maybe. Are they just your female ancestors? Maybe. I tend to take as with the Alfar, I tend to take a much more broad-based approach because on the one hand, I've seen all manner of Deseer show up when the call has been laid out. And I think that it's not for me to dictate to other people what their relationships look like, but I can say this is my experience. And so the Deseer and the Dísablót, I kind of take an all of the above approach.
I take the soul lore approach. So I'm going to go left field right now. So I am a huge proponent of Winifred Hydrose's soul lore, as you guys are probably well aware.
Fantastic book.
And more than that, like her whole
her website's amazing, and just the whole thing.
It is.
And if you Heathen soul lore, Google it, you'll find it. It's beautiful. But part of that is having the multi-part soul. I believe the Deseer is the personification of that part of our soul that is the protection of family. And that part of our soul, when we die, rejoins. And then when someone is born, a part of that miasma of soul is gifted to that child. And so to me, it is all nurturing souls. It doesn't have to be male, doesn't have to be female, because trust me, it just doesn't. All nurturing soul, the nurturing part of the soul personified. And it's all that have existed and all that will exist. And when they are not existing within a living being, then they exist to be the protective spirits of home and family. And especially, and once again, something when I was on your podcast, I talked about, I'm an addict. I'm a recovered addict, over 20 years of sobriety. My primary deity, I guess you could say, I work with within my recovery is the Disir, because part of my recovery is healing the soul wound of having a bad mother. And that is, to me, one of the ways, and my therapist loves this, by the way. She didn't know about the Disir until she had me as a client, and now she thinks this is the greatest thing ever. My therapist, and here it is. This is, to me, the personification of care and nurturing and protection, what every person needs as a child. And we all have it within us, and it exists around us as a powerful part of the soul that exists. And we can call upon that. If we don't get that from our upbringing or whatever environment that we had, it's something that I have experienced that you can call upon as that protective force, whether you need it to protect you from, like, in a healing manner, or when you're calling upon it. When I do end of life care, I do a lot of end of life work. It's a very comforting end of life thing for people to transition into, because this warm healing. I've often said, the few heathens I have been with at end of life, or I've spoken to who've had near death experiences, have described this warm, caring feeling. And I do truly believe that Disir spirit, that soul, I can't, there's not a word in the English language that grasps what it is. Like, it's so overwhelming. That Disir, like, almost like big fluffy cloud. I don't know. There's no real way to describe it, but except to say that I do feel like that is maybe what greets you really first on the other side, because that's what you need. You've fought whatever it is, that battle you fought. And so by that, I do believe Valkyries could fall into the Disir, because they do greet and comfort and take care of warriors. So to me, the Disir are kind of a jam. So sorry.
All good.
Don't apologize.
The soul, especially, I do believe that we all have the Disir within us, but the Disir as a being, or as a gathering of beings, is really just something that we all can resonate to because of the soul, and because we all have that part of that in us, and that part of us will return back to the collective. There's a good one. No, yeah. The Disir, it's the most loving Borg ever.
Right. Right. Borg Queen is good mom. Yeah.
Yes. Frigga is the Borg Queen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But no, it really is. And to me, it is very much the person you can call upon for the sick. You can call, to me, the handmaidens, definitely, Frigga and her handmaidens fall into this, because it's someone you can call upon for healing and all of these things that I think are so important, especially when you work in, I work in healthcare. So in those spaces, I think are so important. So to me, the Disir is something I honor daily, but it also can kind of, Dísablót is going to be a big thing. It's going to be something, my entire kindred actually is going away. We're doing a retreat, and it's going to be a very important time for us.
Oh, that's neat.
And
awesome.
Yeah, we actually have rented a cabin, and we're going to spend 3 days together. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
although part of that is going to be, we're also going to go dig crystals, because we're also, all of us are rock nerds. It's great.
Awesome.
But to me, like I said, the Disir, in as much as, I really feel like the Disir are some of the most neglected and overlooked, but yet important part of healing.
Which is unfortunate. They're some of my most steadfast allies.
Mine too, actually. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear them get more play. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. They are mine as well. Although I tend to talk about this as feminine presenting, because they have some of these stereotypical marks of femininity when they are not really gendered, right? Especially they just have these qualities that we assign to feminine people, like being protective, being nurturing, being sort of kind, right? And one of the things that we leave out of heathenry is kindness often. And the Disir, I feel like our spirit of kindness that we're sort of ignoring. It's one of the reasons why I was so touched at Trothmoot by Mare's ritual for Frigga, because she embodied that in that space and that time, right? That love, just love, right? That wanting to build relationship, that wanting to build peace, that wanting to build that you be prosperous, right? And I think of them that way all the time. So it was a very cool thing to see someone else feel that way about, their feminine presenting whoever came before, right?
It's for me, I don't have children due to a combination of not being able to have my own biological children and living somewhere where almost all of the foster and adoption agencies are controlled by fundamentalist Christianity. I was never able to have children. And so I went through a very big crisis about 5 or 6 years ago about what am I, when I die, who's going to remember me? How am I going to, live on after death in that way? And the DCer was such a great comfort, because then my brain's like, well, part of me is going to rejoin that DCer. Part of me is going to exist on as that protective and kindness and love and go on. I don't have kids, but I have a godson. Somebody's got to watch out for him. He's chaos incarnate. So yeah, I love the kid, but he is chaos.
I understand.
He's 12. That's what they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Hell on wheels.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're supposed to be. But that's the thing. Like, you have to, as a, to me, it's such a comfort knowing that even long after I'm forgotten, I'm still here. A part of me always is going to exist because of how I view and feel about the DCer. And now, the Troth is my child right now, but that's not
totally understandable. Yeah.
But I really do think, the DCer they need better publicists, really. The gods get all the credit, but man, the DCer, the land spirits, those are the things that I interact with and probably have the connections with in a way that, I think are really important.
It's so funny because when I teach people about, especially esoteric topics in heathenry, the Disir, the Fedrar, the Ergi, the Thavur, the powerful ancestors are the people that I point them to first and foremost before I even point them to gods or any other group of Vater, because these are the people that have your back.
Same. These are the people that intimately care about you. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They actually care whether or not you stumble head first into a dangerous situation or whether you put your foot in the bear trap. And they might cuss at you while they take your foot out of it, but they will at least take your foot out of it.
Let's be honest, some of the gods would put the bear trap out there.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Love my gods deeply, but yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Me too. Anyway.
And this is how I catch a new berserker. Watch this. But I mean, the thing about Lunar Nights, for me, kind of like bringing this all home, is it gives us this opportunity to really reflect on who our ancestors are, how we relate to them, how we understand them, and in what ways we remember them, but also what ways we're setting up for us to be remembered, and asking ourselves the perennial question of what kind of ancestor am I becoming? Because we are the next generation of ancestors and what are we leaving behind as ancestors in the making? That for me is a real big question. Besides the obvious of what am I bringing into the winter? What am I bringing into my community? What's the frith? What's the hospitality that I am providing this community? What frith and hospitality am I providing the ancestors, and what are they in turn giving me? That for me, this gifting cycle extends from my innermost heart to the outermost reaches of my community. And these, the Alfar, the Disir, all the gods, the ancestors, and the Vetir, they're all part of it. And they're just as bound up as my human relationships. So how am I pushing and pulling, carving and weaving in this time? And what am I leaving behind?
And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's really funny that I think a lot of us, especially if you come out of evangelical Christianity, go through the cycle of first you worry about what's going to happen after I die, meaning, the afterlife, right? And then you hit a point in heathenry where you start worrying about what kind of legacy am I going to leave? And I feel like that's one of those times when you start realizing your frame of mind has really changed when it comes to being heathen or being, you're because there isn't a huge focus on the afterlife. It really is about remembering those that have already gone. Where you notice in all of this discussion, we've not really talked about what's going to happen to, there's no talk about hell. There's no talk about afterlives. It's more about what those people who've come before have did during their life, because heathenry is one of the things I love about it is a life affirming religion.
Yeah. I could talk about soul lore and the transmigration of the various souls, but we don't have time for that yet.
But at the end of the day, that's not the focus of our religion. It's something that I'm nerdy about, but it's not the focus. My focus is today is like,
yes.
As and as someone, as right now with what I do at the Troth, my focus and has been as president of the organization has been, what positive changes am I going to make that when my godson is an active member of the Troth and he's an adult are still going to be a blessing to him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I was taking my daughter and my dog and my partner and I all went for a walk, and we have 3 shrines in our forest. And to a certain degree, this is the legacy I leave behind with the land. How do you offer right? How do you, what do you give? How do you give it? Like today we offered tobacco and mugwort, one after the other. Some days I offer alcohol, some days I don't. And part of the teaching that I have to do with my daughter, because she's a very impulsive 6-year-old, is, okay, sweetie, we don't throw the offering down. Let's try again. That's not as respectful as putting it down. It's all these little lessons that we build into our relationship with those who are coming after us. And as I'm sitting there, I'm contemplating, we are forging these living relationships with the land. If nobody else remembers us, if I wasn't a dad, if I wasn't a partner, the land would remember me.
Yes.
For me, I'm doing that by participating in the National Park in Your Yard program, where the goal is to replace 80% of the plants. And I live in the city, so I live in a city, so but the goal is to replace 80% of the plants in your yard with native indigenous plants, with the focus on building a wildlife friendly yard. We just bought this house in May, so I've made 0 progress on it because it's been hot and we had a bunch of other stuff. I had a lot of, unpacking, that kind of stuff. So now that it has finally cooled off, my goal is to do that. That's part of my goal in giving back, is I want to leave this land in this house a place where the local wildlife can thrive, where the land spirits feel comfortable here and happy because it's not full of chemicals and invasive plants. It's full of native plants. It's full of life and birds and bees and butterflies and all of those wonderful things. And that's how that's my way of honoring the land spirits and being a part of this, is really giving back to that and honoring my land and building that connection, is creating a place where the land is welcome in the city, where, there's so much put on, green grass and all that stuff. Don't buy an HOA, kids. That's all I got to say.
Sorry, we had to. We just bought our house in July. But one of the things we are working on doing, is replacing the lawn, because water is a big thing here, right? We don't have enough of it. Wildfires are bad. So we're going to be replacing the lawn with native grass, because we're on the edge of the plains. Because, yes, and I did this at our last house too, and I've done this at every house since the 80s, as long as I've been heathen, because the spirits of place have always been my first relationship. Before the gods, before ancestors, the spirits of place were my first relationship as a little kid. So every time I go, I make friends with the spirits of place, right? And part of that here is going to be to get rid of this foreign lawn and put in what actually belongs here. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they offered to resod part of the backyard, and I'm like, no, let the wild violets run.
Right.
But that's the thing. Like, to me, I feel like sometimes we get caught up in the highfalutin part of heathenry, that we forget the rest of it, the community, and you talk about leaving a legacy. My husband's goal, and like, I'm kind of down with it. We want to be remembered as the house that gives away full-size candy bars at Halloween.
Right?
You're going to remember for friggin' ever.
Yes.
Best memory ever, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, right, exactly. And like, to me, that's such a huge thing to me. And I am, what is your reputation? What reputation are you building? And I think that's something that I hope everyone, if you take nothing else away, my friends, I hope that you take away that everyone who is watching this now or replay, think about what legacy you're leaving behind, and the legacy of people that you genuinely respect, and think about how you can leave that kind of legacy behind as well, because we're all going to die.
Right. And I also want to point out, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be a kind word. It can be a mentor, help a kid with their homework, help someone in with their groceries. It doesn't have to be huge. Just do something.
Oh, I was talking about my teacher that we all loved. Do you want to know why we all loved? He listened. He didn't do huge. It wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't a flashy thing, but he was the teacher that we always knew would listen and not judge us. That's it.
That's it.
And
that's all.
Hundreds of kids sit and remember and love this man for that. Yeah, not all of us can be Ben Wagner. Try.
Yeah, not all of us can be Ben Wagner.
But all of us can be kind. All of us can build better community. I always say, like, the best thing you can do as a heathen is look around you and build a better community.
Yes.
For everyone.
Yes.
Like we talked about last week, I mean, and if you didn't listen last week, Ben and I rambled for 2 hours about community. I think definitely this week has been better. We've had structure. It's been great. But yeah, community. I mean, it all comes down to those ethics of community hospitality and honoring people for what they do that is good, and remembering for the things they do that are good.
And remembering that not all people are human.
Yep.
That not all humans are people.
Right. And not all humans are people.
So, what do you guys have planned for your winter nights this year?
Well, this year, so for my family, a lot of the heathen holidays we either celebrate alongside our other regular house occurrences. So a lot of them kind of slot into our usual meal or night prayer kind of setup because of scheduling. To be perfectly honest about it, this winter nights is probably going to be again one of those low key, mild things where we might tip our heads and make some prayers and make some extra offerings for the various Vati and God's ancestors and all the rest. But it's for a lot of our family bloats, they are, I suppose, a bit more low key and less high ritual, and they're kind of more integrated into our regular worship cycles, I guess you might say that. So nothing too earth shattering or what have you.
So tomorrow for Dísablót, actually, I'm helping. I'm not doing a ritual per se, but I'm helping a social justice network with a ritual about shame, and how to take shame out of the equation when you're dealing with hard topics like anti-bigotry, anti-racism, those sorts of things. So that's what I'm doing for Dísablót. And then for Álfablót on the 11th, our kindred is going to get together and have a ritual and a feast and talk about mostly what both their ancestors and those values that they want to emulate from those ancestors, right? Like your grandma, right? Wonderful person, got you, and also, right?
Yeah.
So what part of that do you want to pull out and work with in your life, and what part are you like, no? And so that's what we're doing for Álfablót on the 11th, November 11th.
Like I said, I'm doing the Troth ritual tomorrow, which if I wasn't, it was probably going to be something much more low key with my kindred, probably just, much less high ritual than this. But this is a little different because it needs to be a little more explanatory. So it's, when my kindred's been together for 20 years. So we know how this works. And so I don't have to do as much explaining. However, and then like I said, for the end, we're going to go on a retreat and be out on the lake and do our Dísablót. And so I'm really excited about that. And in between, I actually, so if you haven't, I'm a head covering Heathen. And this is one of the holy tides that I will only wear dark colored head coverings from the time after Álfablót until after Dísablót. I will wear dark covered hair coverings except for when I swim, because I only have one that I can swim in, and it's purple. But that not really. And that is part of my recognizing of the time of year and the holy tide, and a lot of my hair covering practices are tied to various holy tides as far as color and style and stuff. So, and I will be fully covering all the time as well, instead of half. I fully cover. It's weird. But it's one of the times that I fully cover when I'm not at home in my protective safe space for that whole holy tide, because of the nature of some of the beings you can encounter this time of year. Let's just say that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
So, well, thank you guys so much for being with us tonight. Everybody who joined us for the stream. If you can go onto your various platform and like and share, this has been so great, and I really appreciate it. We will be back next week. I won't be here. Ben KG will be leading, or no, actually he won't. I don't know who's doing it next week. Actually, maybe Carl. Somebody's doing it next week, not me.
We will be here next week. Yes.
Yeah, we'll be here next week. It just won't be me. I'll be at the lake. So someone other than me will be here next week, and we will have another topic lined up. Problem is that we will plan a topic, and then something is going to happen, and that's going to change our plan. So I don't know what it's going to be yet. Because my luck, we will, plan a topic, and then something will happen with Delphi, and we'll have to come and talk about that for 2 hours. So
I mean,
yeah,
I
understand.
So, watch this space,
if you like what you heard tonight, if you're interested in helping us continue our mission for inclusive heathenry, go over to thetroth.com. Check us out. We have the largest free library of heathen resources, as well as a lot of great other information. We can help you find your local heathens through our lovely, wonderful stewards. We also have programs such as Heathens in Recovery that can help with addiction and mental health. And if you want to support our mission of inclusive heathenry, of course, you can join us. And that also gives you access to our Discord, our Facebook group, and a lot of other really cool things we have, like our devotional groups, which Piper is head of one of ours. I'm actually really involved with our Frigga devotional group, where we have a Stitch and Bitch every Tuesday night, as well as a lot of our educational programs, our member mutes, and our divination events. Like we there's always something going on. So check us out. And with that, we will be back next week. And take care, everybody. Night.
Good night, everyone. Have a lovely holy tide.
My mouse has just disappeared. Well, y'all, hang on a minute. Sorry.